My hope is that if anyone is listening, that they would read the story of Esther, because it's so rad. There's just so much going on there and so many like things to pull out of it. But that two would be that we would really look at our lives, that we would look at her life and how she lived it and realize that like we all have opportunities. We all have the favor of God. So anyways, we're talking all month about different people in the Bible and how they lived their life in the best ways possible.
Now, can that be a little bit too, like your best life and you don't even know it?
Oh, totally.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, totally. You know, I'm really excited about this week's.
Yeah, because you are, if anyone were to ask me what your favorite book of the Bible is, I would just know that it's Esther.
But it's not.
It's not?
Yeah, it is.
I was going to say, that would be weird. That would be random.
Is.
Because whenever asked, you always say that. And you want to know what's interesting about that is, I mean, I know why it is, but I also don't know why. So I'm curious to hear.
Maybe. What do you mean you don't know why?
I'm curious to hear more about it today.
She's mad inspiring.
I know, but is it because it's one of those good woman stories? Because there's not a ton of woman stories.
I don't even know if it's that, because you know me, I'm not like a She-Ra, man-hater club type person. But I'm also like, yeah, strong woman, that's pretty sweet. That's really not why. I just think there's so many nuggets. Like I've read it so many times, and every time I get something else out of it.
Yeah.
And so this is one thing that's kind of funny. So obviously I'm married to you, and you are an insanely gifted speaker, preacher, teacher. In my opinion, you are. Okay. And probably some other people's opinion too. And the way that you can like memorize scripture and like tell stories, like especially biblical stories, for me is mind-blowing. Like my brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Case in point, I'm trying to talk to you about what we're doing for the next month, and I'm also thinking about my deodorant.
True.
So my brain has a hard time focusing and remembering stuff. So
I do that too, though. I'm partly distracted right now because somebody threw me a project that I said yes to that stole all of my confidence because of things like you just said. Like, I can memorize things, but so anyways, for those that don't know, I just had to do like this. What do you call it?
No, not had to, got to, baby.
I got to. Yeah, not got to.
Spoken really word. Exciting. Joe just jumped up out of his comfort zone.
I did a spoken word piece.
Which, baby, you know, like in my dreams.
Yeah, that was totally, should have been made for you.
You know, in my dreams, like, Ben, I don't know if you know this. Okay, but guys, by the way, our son-in-law is always with us in here.
Yeah.
So if you haven't figured that out yet.
If you haven't figured that out. Sam, I think
Ben,
I didn't put on deodorant.
Did you know, you didn't either? Oh, God. Did you know that in my dreams that I'm like a spoken word artist? No, I didn't. Oh, yeah. Like I think about it all the time, like myself, like just spitting it. Okay. But I just never done it.
You know that Sammy's wrote some songs.
I've like written
stuff, right?
a bunch of like songs and a bunch of like spoken word things. I've just never done anything with them because whatever. So maybe that's like a video project you and I could do one time, like bust out some.
Yeah, spoken. I would love it because I will tell you, I've got a great appreciation. So there's two things, right? Like if I were to write my own poem, which I don't write poetry, but if I were to, you're inspired by your own lyrics, story, you know, even the tempo.
And you kind of know how you want it to flow.
So with this one, what was tough was it was already kind of pre-made, you know, so everybody already had the vision for it. The video's created for it. They have the words for it. Someone has even like used their voice to like show the tempo of it. So you're coming in trying to match all that. They just wanted to steal my voice.
They're like Ursula, the under the sea
so I must have done
Queen Nasty Ursula stealing the voice of Ariel.
Respectfully, without exaggeration, I probably
like give yourself a 1 out of 10.
I probably did 50 takes. I would say 50 takes. 1 out of 10. That would be really tough to rate because right now I'm feeling pretty low about myself, and not because I didn't do a good job. It's just
You've never done it.
No, I've never done it. Right, so I don't even know how to know if I did a good or bad job. So we'll see.
You'll find out when they ask you to redo it again.
We'll do a shameless plug here.
No, don't tell anybody because it's not out yet.
Zero secret. secret. So
okay,
anyways, Esther.
So back to Esther. Yeah.
Sorry.
So this is what I was going to say. And see, I remember I can come back full circle.
Girl.
I'll squirrel off a bit. But
you got to put a pin
boom,
in it.
I'm back.
You got to put a pin in it.
So what I was saying was you're really great at like telling stories.
Keep saying how great I am about things. That makes me
Shut
feel
up,
good.
baby.
Right,
you know I'm easily distracted. Don't interrupt. So it's like kind of like, ugh, for me to be able to like, or to have the like, have it be on me to like tell a story.
Yeah.
Like, especially like a biblical story, right? Like I can tell you a story about like going to the store or like what I did in a day, whatever. I have no problems talking necessarily, but like telling a story is like, especially when I'm sitting next to you. So what I'm going to attempt to do
are you going to tell Esther's story like slam poetry style?
No. Okay. I'm going to tell Esther's story just like Sammy Rogalski style. Like I'll just break it down like little, bullet points. But with that, I like really want to encourage everybody to go read it because it is such a great story and I'm going to miss a lot of the nuggets. There are a lot of nuggets.
I think you'll do well. And let's just remind everybody that's listening right now, the reason why we're doing this is because kind of our theme is
people that are living blessed and best lives, like how they're doing it.
But with not necessarily a twist, but like a biblical twist. We're highlighting real people and biblical scriptures, not just necessarily what we think is our best blessed life.
And we talked about that last week.
You'd have to kind of probably go back and because we kind of did a definition on blessed and what we thought a blessing was. Okay,
so I'm going to just listen. I took notes even because I just know that I would start talking about my deodorant or sweat drops.
Sammy came in prepared today. I'm so thirsty. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I took notes just like, and I'm just going to break it down like, Sammy Rogalski style. It's not going to be real like, deep as I'm like just telling you the bullet points.
Why? Hey,
because I'm not. No. Because I'm.
Stop chopping.
It will get deep.
Just
baby.
Bring it, girl. Bring it.
No. While I'm telling the story now, I'm just gonna tell you little bits and pieces.
Tell me about Esther.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. First, I'm going to tell you about Xerxes. Okay. So back in the day, there was this king named Xerxes. Mm-hmm. He was the king of Persia, which apparently at that time was a big deal. He was the king of all kings in Persia. Okay. Yeah. And he decided that he was going to throw this party for 180 days. Yes. And for 180 days, they were going to just bust out the finest things, like all the finest foods, all the finest tableware, all the finest everything. Like even to the point where...
Kind of like showing off a little bit.
Yeah, totally showing off the splendor that is he and everything that he has. And so like even to the point where like not a single goblet that they drank out of was the same. Like every single one was gold and different. Nice. And like he's like really showing off, okay? And so at the same time he's doing this, the queen, Vashti, she's throwing a party, okay? And King Xerxes is like, okay, I'm going to show off like the splendor of my kingdom. And I'm going to do this for like a long time. And we're just going to like party it up. Well, he gets tipsy, AKA drunk.
Yeah, he does get a little tipsy.
And he's like, I want to show off the queen to everyone. So he sends 7 eunuchs. Y'all, I don't even know what a eunuch is. But
I can tell you what a eunuch is.
Okay, what is it?
It's a castrated male, basically.
What?
Yeah, there are men that have sworn an allegiance, whether to God or to a man or whatever, and they're not going to get busied with being married and having children and stuff like that.
Jeesh, I didn't know that. So here's a nugget I didn't even know. So he sends
whether or not they're castrated or not is, but typically
that's debatable.
Yeah, they basically are saying they're not going to get married. They're not going to have kids.
Okay, so let's move on. So
their allegiance is to the throne.
Yeah. So
God.
he sends 7 eunuchs, which I'm thinking to myself like, why is he sending 7? But he sends these 7 dudes, and he's like, hey, go get Queen Vashti. Tell her to come here. I want to show off her beauty to everyone. Yes. Part of me is like, did he send 7 because she's already like just rebellious and he knows it's going to take 7 to get her there? I don't know.
Maybe she's
I'm not going to speculate.
And beautiful.
Joe, you're terrible. Okay, so they go to her and she's like, no, I refuse. Like, I'm going to stay at my party. Sorry, King Xerxes. Well, he's tipsy and he gets furious. It actually says angry. Burning with anger. And I don't know about you. I've burned with anger before, but I've never like kicked a queen out forever. So he decides in his burning anger, he asks these dudes who normally like help him figure out like what are the laws, like what do we do?
Yeah, what can I do about this?
What do I do about Queen Vashti because she is
embarrassing me.
She's not listening. Yeah, whatever. So they say, well, hey, dude, Xerxes, this is not only a problem for you, but it's a problem for us and it's a problem for all men in the kingdom because they're learning by her example. Yes. Everybody, all the women are going to be like, well, Queen Vashti didn't have to listen to the king, so I'm not going to listen to you. And they're like, okay, this is a problem. So they decide Queen Vashti is vamoose. She's a goner. Yep. So Queen Vashti gets kicked out. And then let's see what goes on in my notes because I don't want to miss anything. Blah, 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 blah. Got that. Okay. So they make a royal decree even. And they're like, Vashti's out. So then it says Xerxes' anger subsided. And then he remembered everything that happened. So I don't know.
He must have taken a drink out of each one of his individual goblets.
Who knows what he did? And that's like a whole, It's like a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, the things that we do that are stupid, and that's why we shouldn't be drunk. But
so once he comes to his senses.
Yeah, so he comes to his senses, and then he's like, all right, time to ignite a search for a new queen. Like, we got to replace this chick, okay? So he tells all these people, like, go and gather, like, all of the most beautiful virgins and, like, bring them here. And what we're going to do is we're going to give them, oh, gosh, I can't remember how many days. So you're going to have to read the story and figure it out. But all sorts of beauty treatments.
Yes.
For all sorts of days. And then they'll be presented to him, and he picks, like, whichever one he has, you know, whichever one he thinks is the best, okay? Well, I don't know about you.
How many days does it take?
But I would like a lot of beauty treatments.
And how many days does it take to get a girl clean?
Babe, listen, you know what I look like when I wake up and what I look like if I have a beauty treatment.
I mean, he's probably got people teaching him how to talk and how to walk and how to wear their clothes.
That could be. It could
Let's
be
just say
more
it's 30
than
days. Let's say it's 30 days.
More than just great skincare or something. Okay, so one of the people, one of the women that gets picked to like get all these beauty treatments and then be presented to the king is Esther.
Yes.
So Esther actually, which this is so exciting and blows my mind, is an orphan. So her parents die and her cousin Mordecai, so her name is actually Hadassah and she goes by Esther, right? Kind of like I'm Samantha, go by Sammy. So her cousin Mordecai decides, I'm going to raise her just like she's my own daughter, right? So he raises her. And so she gets an opportunity to be part of this like group of people that gets all these beauty treatments and is presented to the king for him to pick who he wants. Well, the thing that is a little tricky about Esther is that she is from Jewish descent. So Mordecai is a Jew. She is a Jew. And maybe you can speak a smidge to what that means in that day in Persia.
Don't need to.
Okay, you will when it gets to Mordecai?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, don't need to. Okay, so long story short, Xerxes likes Esther the best. Yeah. So he's like, that's the one I want. She's my queen. Yes. Well, this whole time, Mordecai tells her, don't tell him that you're a Jew. Kind of just sneak in there. I'll let you know when the right time is, right? So she doesn't tell Xerxes that she's a Jew. She becomes queen. And this is where it starts getting tricky and exciting, right? So everybody, side note, everybody that saw Esther favored her. Like she had the favor of everyone. Well, one day Mordecai is like out kind of in the like palace, what is it, like courtyard or something? And he overhears these two guys talking about how they're plotting to kill the king, Xerxes. So he is like, ooh, hold up. I'm going to go tell Esther. So he tells Esther. Esther goes to the king and is like, hey, Mordecai heard these dudes.
Well, he didn't say Mordecai, did he?
Yeah. Mordecai, yep. So it was credited to Mordecai,
I knew that
right?
part,
So those dudes get hung because, you know, they're plotting to kill the king. And Mordecai now has a little soft spot in the heart of Xerxes, right? So at the same time, there's this dude, Haman, who is like the right-hand kind of man of the king. He's like one of his like best guys. Well, Haman is, he's expecting everyone to also bow to him. Well, Mordecai refuses. He's not going to. Well, that ticks off Haman, and it sends him on this like tangent of like, I'm so mad at Mordecai. I'm going to figure out who his people are, and I'm going to make it real bad for them. Yeah. So he finds out he's a Jew. He's like, let's get rid of the Jews. And it gets all kinds of nasty. Well, then Mordecai is like real upset, right? Like, and he had already told Esther, like, don't say anything. Like, you just need to play it chill. We can't let him find out that you're a Jew yet. But Mordecai is all sorts of upset, right? And he goes, so Esther finds out that he's upset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she sends people like, hey, what's going on? He tells her that Haman has this plot to take out the Jews. And Mordecai is like still telling her like, hey, you know, you kind of need to chill it out. Like, but this is what's going on. So Esther is like, okay, Mordecai, this is what I need you to do.
Mm-hmm.
You need to pray. You need to get all the Jews.
Yeah.
You need to pray and you need to fast for 3 days. I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk to the king.
Yeah.
And so then he says, so here's like one of the best ones. People, like, if you haven't heard this verse, well, I don't know what to tell you. So Esther's, okay, so this is in chapter 4. We'll just start in 12. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all of the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will rise from another place. Yeah. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this. So then that's when she says, like, all right, gather all Jews, pray and fast, and then we're going to like...
Because she's scared. Like it's not like she can just
she's risking her life.
Well, yeah, she can't just go approach the throne of God. And,
well,
I mean,
the throne of
the
Xerxes.
king, yes.
Well, yeah, like he has to like extend his royal scepter to her for her to even approach him.
And that has already passed. He did it once to like get eyes on her, but now like, a certain amount of times.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like you really got to read the story because there's so many nuggets, and I just get really excited about it. Okay,
you're crushing it. I want to get the Sammy Commentary Bible.
Oh yeah, right.
I
okay,
like
so. Then all of a sudden, king decides like, okay, Esther's gonna have a banquet. Yep. And so she has this fancy banquet. And he says to her, King Xerxes says to Esther, hey, Esther, what is it that you want? And she says, hey, I'll tell you tomorrow. I want you to bring Haman here. And in the background, Haman is like hating Mordecai. Mm-hmm. And, I missed the whole thing. Hold on.
Did you miss the Haman-Mordecai situation, or is that coming up? I'm trying to piece all this together.
The robe. Okay, where is that in the story? Okay, okay, hold on. Somewhere in the story, Haman. Oh, wait, no, that's later. I know what it is. Okay. So the king has this banquet, and he asks Esther, like, hey, what do you want? Right? Mm-hmm. Well, in the meantime, like Haman still can't stand Mordecai, right? Mm-hmm. And and he is plotting to kill Mordecai and all the Jews.
Haman's plotting to kill Mordecai.
And he even sets up a thing to kill him on. Like he's like
built this like huge,
he's got a vendetta.
Like a spigot, like a big spear.
Yeah. He's got a vendetta. Yeah. So Haman shows up to the party. He's super happy, but then he sees Mordecai and he is mad as all get out. So he leaves, and then that's when he builds this whole thing, and he's going to get him killed on it, blah, 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 blah. So that night, the king couldn't sleep. Like, he was like, I can't sleep. So he starts reading the chronicles of his reign. Which,
I think that calls him.
That's kind of what we all do, right? Like, when I can't sleep, I'm thinking about my whole life. All the ways that I have succeeded and mostly all the ways that I fail. So King Xerxes is doing this, and he is, of course, reminded about what Mordecai did. So he asks Haman, hey, Haman, what did we ever do for Mordecai when he spared my life?
Yeah, stop for a second, because this is a fun, exciting point, right? Yeah. So King Xerxes is like, hey, once this guy named Mordecai like tipped me off that somebody was going to kill me, I should reward this guy, right? So he brings in his right-handed man Haman, right? And what is he?
So he says to Haman, hey, the king has favor on a man. There's this guy that like brings me like joy. Yeah. What should I do to honor him?
What would I do to honor him?
So Haman's thinking that it's Haman.
Yeah, Haman's like, oh, my buddy, my king couldn't be thinking of anybody other than myself. So I'm basically getting the right to pick my own blessing here.
Yeah. So he's like, give him a robe that you've worn, give him a horse that you've ridden.
Parade them all through the land.
Yeah. Tell everyone how he is the man that you found favor with.
The guy seated on the horse is my best friend and the greatest in the land.
Right. So meanwhile, behind the scenes, though, Esther is praying and fasting.
Yeah, and so is Mordecai,
along with Mordecai and all the Jews, right? So Haman
finishes telling him all these things.
Haman tells him, do all this stuff. And then the king is like, perfect. Do that for Mordecai.
Go grab Mordecai, put a robe on him, throw him on a horse. And he himself, Haman, was the one to, wasn't it Haman that toured him through the land, yelling to everybody, basically, this is the great,
so of course Haman is irate.
Talk about embarrassing.
Yeah, right?
I mean, beyond embarrassing.
You're like at home building a thing to like hang a guy on, and then now you have to parade him. Yeah, like impale him.
Impale him.
And now you got to parade him around and tell everybody how he is the one that the king has found favor with, right?
The one that the king loves.
Oh, my Lanta. There's just so many good nuggets. So then that all of that goes down, and then I'm going to read. So then in chapter 7, the king and Haman decide to go to Esther's banquet.
Yep.
Okay. So they're drinking wine. All this is going down. And the king says to Esther, okay, Esther, I'm ready. Like, what's your petition? Like, what do you want?
Yeah, because he says something to her like, half of all I have. I'm
going to get there. Yeah. So the queen.
Sorry.
So he tells her that she can have anything that she wants, up to half of the kingdom.
Yeah.
She says, okay, come back to me tomorrow, bring Haman, and I will let you know what I want then. Meanwhile, she's praying and fasting with Mordecai and all the other Jews. So he comes with Haman to the banquet and is like, okay, what is your request? Even up to half of the kingdom, it's going to be granted. So verse 3, Queen Esther says, if I have found favor with you, O king, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. Spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold for destruction and slaughter and annihilation. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, well, I would have just kept quiet. So she's like, it's worse than being like sold as slaves. Like they're trying to annihilate us.
They're imminent. Basically, they're extinction.
Right. So she says, I wouldn't have bothered. Yeah. She's like, I wouldn't have bothered you, king. I would have just kept quiet, but it's much worse than that. So King Xerxes is like, whoa, who is he? Who's the man who dared to do such a thing? And she's like, well, it's an adversary and an enemy. It is the vile Haman. Yep. So
boy, Haman,
well, he is scared to death with good reason because he ends up getting killed. Like he gets, annihilated himself.
I think if I remember,
the thing that he built for Mordecai.
I think I remember like somebody says to the king like, well, he actually built a 50-foot skewer to impale.
Yep.
Mordecai
somebody reminds him, and then that's what they end up killing him on.
It's like outside his house.
It was.
I remember, like Haman's got a wife in this whole gig
and like
too.
His whole family basically was annihilated because of him. Okay.
Well, you meant for evil.
Yeah, no kidding. So then, long story really short, the king is like, okay, no more killing of the Jews. The Jews are good with me. Yeah. We love the Jews. Boom, triumph for all of the Jews because Esther spoke up. He extended like his scepter to her, and now she's queen, and all of her people are like triumph throughout the land, right? Yep. So that's really like what happens at all the end. Well, then it ends up actually after this like whole tribute and all of this like honor goes out throughout the empire, Mordecai actually becomes esteemed and becomes known as like a very great man because he worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of the Jews. So that's like the Book of Esther in a very like quick nutshell. Again,
that was a beautiful nutshell. That's. I mean, for anybody that just listened to that, they basically got the overview. I mean, that
it's like an overview.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part. I think
there's a lot.
There's so much
that you can pick out of this. There's a lot that you can glean. And I will say, like, of course, like we're focusing on Esther this week, but before we like really focus on her, like one thing that I always have thought about with this story is Queen Vashti. Again, we're not going to focus on her. Yeah. Who knows what happened to her, but it makes me think, and like, hey, I'm not here to get into the like women's rights and like submission and like all of that like that's just a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But in this situation, in this time period, what was right and what was customary was for her to do what the king asked her to do. And she didn't, right?
Yeah.
So because of her, we'll just call it disobedience and her like not honoring the king, she gets dethroned and her throne is given to somebody else.
Yeah.
So I just think about that sometimes like, man, like I don't want to be the type of person that, you know, what I'm called to do gets given to somebody else because I'm not willing to do it.
Yeah, because like you said, you don't want to emphasize on the cause because, right, in today's day and age, to call a woman disobedient is...
Right, of course.
You're just going to get
We're going to start... We're going to get canceled.
But if you want to skip over that and just say, hey... In a disobedience to a call, this was her call. She was the queen.
Yeah, she was the queen, but not anymore. And now it's Esther.
And now it's Esther. Yeah, so like almost like a cup can pass over you, right? Like God's will. Anyways, you're still gonna be
like it's going to be done. Like obviously, God wanted the Jews to be free, and if maybe he just knew, like he obviously knows more than we do, so he must have known ahead of time. Like, hey, Vashti ain't going to be the one to do it. It's going to be this Esther who. Dude.
Yeah, so tell me about Esther. Man. This is her best life.
Esther, okay, she had the odds stacked against her. Esther was an orphan.
Yeah.
Which.
Yeah, in a day and age where, orphans aren't celebrated.
Right. And not only was she an orphan, she was an orphan Jew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, this blows my mind. Yeah. And honestly, like, today when I was thinking about it, and I was actually listening to, like, some different Esther sermons and just, like, you know, brushing up on Esther, even though I know it pretty good, I just was like, I just always love hearing different things about Esther. And when I was listening to this one sermon, it actually hit me so hard that she was an orphan and that God used her for a specific time and a specific purpose to bring freedom and triumph to the Jews. And it made me actually think about Worthy and Gospel. Specifically Worthy because, you know, Gospel is just a bit more behind the scenes. Like he's, you know, quite the introvert. He's not really kind of like out there. But I think about Worthy and I think about how like this kid for 5.5 years, 5 years, he was 5.5, 5 years, she was an orphan. Yeah. She was destined to sit in an orphanage. Well, she wasn't destined because she ended up with us. But you know what I mean? Like, she could have, had we not said yes, or, you know, who knows? Maybe if we would have said no, somebody else would have reaped the benefits of having Worthy in their family, which is, like, insane to think about. But, you know, she sat in an orphanage for 5 years. And, like, it's crazy. Like, her touch, like, is worldwide. Yeah, like, people all around the world know this kid and are seeing like how beautiful things can be through adoption and how, you know, people with Down syndrome can be just so wildly amazing or are so wildly amazing. And like she's celebrated. And so it really like hit me thinking, man, like the people that we discount sometimes are like the very people that God will blow our minds with like what he does with them. And so like just being reminded like, man, this girl was an orphan. And then also being reminded that Mordecai, her cousin who adopted her, like how God used him, right? Like what if Mordecai hadn't stepped in to raise her? You know, he raised her in such a way that she was willing, like what if she would have not trusted Mordecai?
Right.
You know, like she would have been like, heck no, I'm not going to go and get in front of the king because he's going to find out I'm a Jew. He's going to live, blah, 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 blah. Like I'm going to die, you know, whatever. Well, obviously Mordecai raised her and gave her wisdom. He was like, hey, like keep it hush hush. I'll let you know like when the time is right. And so I just think about that too. Like, man, like Mordecai was living life well also, like raising this girl who by society's standards was a throwaway, like after her parents were gone, right? It's just crazy to think about like what God can do with a life that is submitted to him, and even what he can do with lives that aren't, like even what he can do with our goof ups.
It makes you think like, and I don't want to take you off.
No, you're good. I don't need to run this whole thing. You know, saying, I get excited about Esther.
Think about all the days and like just the emphasis of what you're saying right now, all the days and months and years before this moment of seeing her purpose. Like, how wonder what the woe is me moments are. You know, like, here's my cousin Mordecai. I'm guessing, maybe they were hungry. Who knows? I mean, we could paint
we have
our
no
own picture.
idea.
But nevertheless, she didn't have parents of her own. And maybe she sat in the swing side, the swings of the courts, wondering what the purpose of her life was. Never to know that in a moment's notice, she could be the queen, the queen setting all of her
the queen of Persia,
setting all of her people free.
The queen of Persia, like what?
Absolutely insane.
It really is crazy.
It wasn't like she had a birth, to be the queen,
right? Well, and the thing is too is like she was given this opportunity, and like she was risking her life. Mm-hmm. Like, easily, the king could have been like...
She could have been selfish, too. Imagine, he did say you could have half.
Oh, yeah. She could have been like, sorry, Jews, the kingdom is mine.
Hey,
half the kingdom is me now.
Mordecai.
Sorry, guys.
Guess what? The Jews, whatever.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like, she really could have been self-serving. Yeah, she could have been. And she wasn't. And not only was she not, she was willing to risk her life. Yeah. And I love that she prayed and fasted. That she, like, when Mordecai says to her, like, hey, if you don't do this, like, it's going to happen anyway, right? Yeah. Like, here's the deal. Like, the Jews are going to be freed. So it can either be because of you, or you could croak, you could be killed in all this, and it will be given to somebody else to do the job.
I mean, for the Jews in particular, the promise was from God.
Yeah.
So even though many people had tried to extinguish them and take them out, they lived by the promise that they would be God's chosen people.
Yeah.
So she gets to be,
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, she gets to.
That's why. That is why it's my favorite.
Like, she is forever logged in this canonized Bible as your favorite. Your favorite story in the Bible.
It's just so cool. Like, there's just so much beauty in it, and it's wow.
Isn't there personal stuff like when you read Esther? Like, so for me, when I read some of my heroes, it's like. You try to personalize some of their call or some of their personality types.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it's very clear, like it's said, like anyone that saw her favored her. Like she was favored by all. She was favored by the king of Persia. She had this nuts place of influence, and she had this opportunity. And she had choices, like what she was going to do with that opportunity. And I think that relates to every single one of us, right? Like, we all have a calling from God, whether we know what it is or not. Like, God has something that he wants to use us for, to impact other people's lives, to draw people to the kingdom, to get people saved. Like, we all have an opportunity. And so I think, I mean, for me, it causes me to reflect and be like, what are those things in my life? Because I don't want to, like, sit back and let somebody else do them. Right. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, well, maybe I'll just, like, that's a little scary, or that's a little out of my comfort zone, or, whatever. And then I just don't do it. And then somebody else gets to be used in that way, like, I don't want that.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't remember if they're my own quotes or somebody else's, if I can't give it to somebody, but I do remember one time thinking, like, what a shame, that there are people in the world that would love my life. What I don't like about my life, what seems to be insignificant in my life, all the needs that I think I need to, there's somebody out there that would take my place and could dream a bigger dream with my life, or live it better than me. I thought that obviously when I think about some of our kids in Haiti, Du Vincent and Peterson especially, like, what would they do with some of the very opportunities that we have? Nothing more, just the opportunities that we have every single day, like, access to people to go talk to, share, or whatever. Yeah. What would they do with it? Oh my gosh. That's sad to think somebody could live my life better than me. Or do more with the opportunities.
And not even just sad, just challenging. Like, for me, it's kind of motivating, not every day, like I had a day like yesterday where I was like, I don't want to do anything. Life is stupid, Whereas today I'm like,
I shouldn't have said sad, but I mean, I don't want that to ever be a reality for my life.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the thing too, like, that I love is that in the backdrop of all of this stuff going on at the very end moments where her people are about to be set free, Mordecai tells her, like, hey, like, perhaps you were created for this time, for such a time as this. And she says, all right, yeah, okay, you're probably right. So you and all the Jews, you need to pray and fast, and I'm going to do the same thing. right? It's not like she didn't just like go and be like, okay, surprise King Xerxes, like, it's me, I'm a Jew. No, she prayed and fasted because she knew that she needed to be like connected to God. Yeah. And not only that, like she drew a community of people into that with her. Amen. And I just think it's like such a reminder for us, like, man, like, how many times do we have decisions that need to be made, or, opportunities that God has for us that we're just kind of like mamby-pamby, just like going for it, or maybe not going for it, when what we really need to be doing is gathering a group of people and being like, hey, like, let's be praying together about this. Let's fast together about this. Because I also think it's That's so a beautiful cool. word right there. Thanks. I think it's so cool, like, that it says that night, that she's getting ready for this banquet, and she's getting ready and praying and fasting about the fact that she's got to tell him that she's a Jew and she needs these Jewish people to be set free. At the same time she's doing that, King Xerxes can't sleep. I find that very fascinating, because in my mind, that is totally God at work, because he can't sleep and he's sitting there like, I mean, he's probably been through a lot, right? You forget certain things, right? Like, this is kind of a strange parallel, but like for me, with my business, there's times where I like look at like what's happened in my business in the last 6 months, and I'm like, oh, that person ordered from me 4 months ago. How did I forget that? Like, what? So it's like, it's not a far stretch to remember or to think of that King Xerxes had so much stuff going on. He might not even remember that Mordecai, spared his life. Like, you'd think you'd remember that, but you never know.
Sitting down remembering his blessings.
Right. And so he's sitting there reading. And I love that Mordecai, when he did this, it was so important to the story that the king wrote it in his chronicles. Like, he was like, this needs to be remembered for all time. Yeah. Everybody needs to know this. And so that night that all this stuff is being set up, and God's like in the background, like making all these things happen, that King Xerxes is like, man, I cannot sleep. So let me just read the story of my life. Oh yeah, Mordecai. Wait a minute. Whatever happened with Mordecai? Like, did we ever like thank him for saving my life? Right. Or like what? Like, I just love that, because it's like you can see so many things like that, right? In life, where all these like little God moments where you're like, that is not coincidence, right? So I love that too. Babe, I get excited about this book.
You're excited. You've got me excited.
There's so much juice. Like, this needs to be like a movie. Like, why has nobody made a movie about this?
Is there not a movie about Esther?
Oh, yeah, actually there is. Why is there not another one?
I don't know.
Why are there not 10? Why is this not a Disney movie?
Yeah. Your excitement about Esther is like, we should all be excited just about the Word of God itself. Man, it is rich. Like, this is so cool because it's such a story. It's like just a beautiful kind of like beginning and end story, like you said, in 7 chapters or 8. I don't even know how many chapters. Are there 9 chapters of Esther? I don't know. 10 chapters of Esther. You get this beautiful, beautiful story. But the Bible is literally riddled with stories like this.
Well, yeah, and even today, like, remember I told you before we started filming, I was like, oh, and like Esther, okay, like even in my Bible, let me look for this page. Even in my Bible, I have notes from like 2014, 2017. Like, I have read Esther so many times. I have written Esther out so many times, because I'm like, I just want to like sponge up all that I can. So I like write the whole book out. Like, I am fascinated with the story. Yeah. And like, of course, like I knew that she was an orphan, but it didn't hit me until today. So
personalized it a little bit.
Like I've read it. I mean, I've read it plenty of times since even Gospel and Worthy have, become not orphans anymore. But yet today, that struck me in such a way that it hasn't before. And that's just to say, like you said, the Scripture is living and breathing. Mm-hmm. You can read the same Scripture. Like, let's just say you read the same verse every year on January 1st for 20 years. It could hit you a different way every single time.
Sure. Yeah, it does.
Like, it's just so amazing. And Esther, man, the whole book just inspires me, because I'm like, there's just so much to grab onto.
So is it still one of your favorites?
Oh, gosh, babe.
It's like, do you remember when... what was the movie that came out that you went to the theater and watched 12 times?
No, not 12. I went to The Greatest Showman like three nights in a row.
No. You came back from the theater, crying, saying, Joey, I need to go back. I think you went back that night.
I went back 3 nights in a row.
3 nights in a row.
I did, because
Esther's kind of like that for you.
Yeah,
like,
because I knew with
yeah.
The Greatest Showman, or I think it's not The Greatest, but with Greatest Showman, I was like, this movie begs to be watched on the large screen, right? Like, you got to see it on the big screen because of the dancing and the movements and the music and like just all of the like, I was like, I have to see it as many times as I can. And then, you know, after the 3rd time, I was like, okay, that's probably excessive amounts of money to spend on it. We'll just buy it when it comes out. But it's still one of my favorite movies of all time. But yeah, Esther, I feel like
Esther, even in a fresh read for today, still one of your favorites?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I think she's definitely through that moment, living her best life.
I mean, the woman could have sold out an entire population, taken everything for herself. Yeah. She could have just pretended she wasn't a Jew forever. Like, maybe he wouldn't have ever figured it out. Yeah. And that's like, she could have, I mean, she was spoiled. Like, the king loved her. He was like enamored with her. He was willing to give her anything she could have ever wanted or asked for. And she was willing to risk her life for the people, for the greater good. Like, that in itself is just inspiring. Like, I hope that if I was in that situation, that's what I would do. But it does make you think about your own life and think, okay, you know, even like with us with Upstream, I'm like, man, there are days where I'm over it. Like, I'm like, man, I'm tired. Like, this burden is so big. And it would be easy for us to, like, you know, get a secular job and, you know, we're capable people. Like, we could just make all sorts of money and just have a nice life, right? Yeah. Like, those things are tempting.
But our best blessed life for us isn't so much self-serving,
right? Well,
or for us, and we highlighted Guy this past week, and that was kind of my thing. Was this is like, you know, Guy and himself. What's awesome about Guy is it could just be Guy, standalone Guy, but what draws me into highlighting him as a person that I think is living their best blessed life is that he always has other people. He has other people on his mind all the time. And that's the thing here with Esther is it's like saving herself and Mordecai would have been beautiful, this story. But she was able to save
all the Jews.
I don't know. I don't even know how to put a number on all of them. But that self-sacrificial type of being blessed and living your best life is pretty amazing.
And I feel like it should push all of us to look at our lives and be like, okay, how am I living my life sacrificially? How am I living my life not just to reap all the benefits for myself, right? Yeah. Whether it's, you know, say you're having great success at your job. Is that just so that you can have more?
Right.
Or is it so that you can bless others? Is it so that you can help build the kingdom? Is, you know, or, you know, an opportunity. Like, if you have like, I think about Worthy and Callista. Like, they have this insane opportunity where, you know, 1.8 million followers on one platform, 100,000+ on another. Like, that is such an opportunity that you could, could you use it to benefit yourself? For sure. But the story of Esther reminds me, like, man, like, there are people out there that are seeing them, that are seeing, like, us, our ministry, whatever is going on. And we have an opportunity to give them life. We have an opportunity to bless them. We have an opportunity to speak life and truth to them. Like, what will we do with that?
I think that's the nugget that we could kind of leave Esther on is when the king asks you,
hey, like, what do you want?
Half of everything that I have is yours. You can pick whatever you want.
The kingdom, the biggest kingdom at that point, Persia.
Your answer in that point is something to think about.
Yeah.
You know, what would you ask? What would you respond?
Man, it honestly is like convicting too, right? Like, if God were to say to me, like, hey, you can have all sorts, we don't even know half of what. I mean, half of America, I don't know. Like, half of whatever.
A lot. Let's just say you could have a lot of the world.
Yeah. What would my response be? Like,
it's basically like saying you have a wish. You have one wish. What is your wish?
Man. That's a lot to think about. It's something that we should all be thinking about. And my prayer and my hope would be that we would always answer, like, whatever brings God the most glory, whatever brings the most good to his people and to people that we want to be his people, you know, like, that would be my hope. That would be like how I want to live my life. And
God chose us. Jesus chose us.
yeah, like that's the thing is it's
so
like
many of our early fathers of faith had the ability to spare their own life if they would just deny Christ as their Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
Just stop saying that he's your Lord and Savior.
Right. And like for us, like obviously at this point in time, we don't live in a country or culture where like our life is on the line for our faith, but it is in a different sense, in the sense of, we might not
Cancel
lose
culture.
it. No, we might not lose. Well, yeah, kind of. We may not lose our life. We may lose it how we want it to be lived.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like if we're like, if God were to say to us, hey, Joe and Sammy, you can have Upstream, like that's going to be this thing like I keep having you do, and there's going to be a lot of struggle with it, but it will be something that brings good to people and glory to me. You can have that. Or on the flip side, like I'll give you all of these like earthly riches and like your family will be successful and everybody will be happy and you'll never want for anything.
Yeah.
Well, like which one would you choose?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for us, I feel like we've made that choice a few times. Obviously, that's a choice we have to make every day.
It's a daily choice.
Every day
sure.
that you wake up, you have the ability to say, I'll be honest with you. There's days where I literally say to myself, like, really? Why? I don't need to carry all this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to carry all this.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, you can just go get a job somewhere and, even at my age, pray that our reward would just be big paychecks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, I think even the way I said that may sound negative, but that's just not for us. That's not that wouldn't bring us.
Well, I mean, big paychecks would be nice. We'd be able to do lots of good with them. But yeah, I mean, like if it's one or the other, obviously that's a choice. And for us,
at the end of the
we have
day,
to leverage our time.
We as a family have decided the one commodity that we have this side of heaven that we have the right to leverage is time. So for me, yeah, if all of a sudden we were pushed into a corner, you only have so much time. So if you have to use your time to earn a living, or your time to serve others, or your time to do both and whatever it is, God will kind of lead you in that. But for us, we have X amount of time to leverage, and we choose to leverage it as much as we can for faith, family, and the call that God's given us.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do at the end of the day.
I hope, okay, so like the rest of the month, we're talking about like different people in the Bible. And, my hope is that if anyone is listening, that they would read the story of Esther, because it's so rad. There's just so much going on there and so many like things to pull out of it. But that two would be that we would really look at our lives, that we would look at her life and how she lived it and realize that like, we all have opportunities. We all have the favor of God, right? Like, it's not like he's like, I really want Joe to be fabulous, but not Sammy. Like he wants good for all of our lives. Yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean it's always good, right? Because he can bring good out of that, whatever. Whole nother topic for another day. But it means that he can be glorified in any of our lives. So how are we submitting our lives, and how are we living our lives for other people and for the kingdom, and focus not just on ourselves and what we can get? Because Esther, again, had the opportunity to get whatever she wanted. Yeah. Anything that she could have ever wanted.
And her story didn't start off to like this.
Yeah, she wasn't like born. It wasn't like she was born a princess. Yeah, the girl was born an orphan.
And that's why when you even say the bad, I've been thinking about the bad a lot lately. And I think sometimes the bad in life, when submit and surrender to God, meaning like to get you through it, when there's bad stuff, things, unexpected things, uncertain things, horrible things that happen in your life, when you're able to get through that, submit and surrender to God, I think it's just preparation for the good to come that you weren't ready for before. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yes,
like
it totally does.
Sometimes I think God is always kind of on this continual path of anytime we are submitted and surrendered to Him, saying this body, this mind, this time that we have is for you to use. Sometimes the good that He wants to bring us into, we're not prepared for, and bad seasons, storms that we go through are preparation for that good to come. And I think about that because Jesus led His disciples 2 different times that I can find into storms, scary, horrific storms. And they were both times to remind them that in spite of the storm, He was with them And somehow that was preparation.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean.
Well, and even like in the story of Esther, right? Like she wasn't prepared to tell him that she was a Jew before she was prepared to tell him that she was a Jew. Right? She had to wait for the right time and the right opportunity. Mm-hmm. And it was completely set up for her. And while it was being set up for her, she knew, okay, it's time to pray. Yeah. It's time to be connected to God. It's time to get other people in on that. I'm going to focus on prayer while God is making the timing right. And then the timing was exactly what it was supposed to be. Yeah. And I just think so many times, like maybe we want to see certain things happen. Us too, like with our ministry or with our family or with a business or with whatever. And God's like, nope, just wait. Like, there's things brewing. You can't even see what they are. You don't even know what they are. Yeah. The time is not quite right. Because what if she would have told him at the beginning? He probably would have been
right. That's
or what if she would have told him a little bit too late and a bunch of Jews were already killed? No, it was literally like the right timing. And she knew when the timing was right. One, because she listened to the wisdom of Mordecai. Mm-hmm. And two, because she was in prayer and she was fasting. Yeah, and she knew like, all right, now's the time to go for it.
Beautiful story.
Oh, wait.
Beautiful story.
That was a good one.
Thank you, babe, so much for bringing that. You did a phenomenal job.
Oh, babe.
I can just hear.
You know, I love me some
Ben
Esther.
Inserting some clapping and cheering.
Esther.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't really do anything other than say what's in the story, which is
good.
You
did a really good job of recapping, and then we took some serious nuggets for ourselves out. That's what Scripture is all about.
Yeah, it's good
stuff. Good job.
All right.
I love you.
I love you too.
Anything you want to say for goodbyes?
No.
Okay.
I think anything that I would say, you just read Esther.
Read Esther for yourself and comment.
Take some nuggets. Yeah. Let us know what nuggets you get out of it.
Comment, shoot us some messages. Let us know what you thought of Esther, how it spoke to you. What were some of the highlight parts for you? And remember, this is all about what are we calling it? Our
living your best blessed life.
Living your best.
What does that really look like? What does that mean?
Share with us what that looks like for you and what that means to you, and we'll make this an open discussion.